ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning again. All right. Actually, we just have a couple of questions to talk to you, a couple of issues to talk to you about. It appears from speaking with you generally, you hadn't informed or expressed any opinions in the case. So now what we're going to do is just ask you a little bit about, I know you, like many people, may have heard about this case from either the media or family or friends or something like that. Just tell us, where do you think you've heard about the case?
At work.
Okay. Okay. Now, have you ever watched any news reports about it or read any articles about the case or anything like that? Okay. And at work, is this just like water cooler talk, people talking about the case and things like that?
Yeah, break room, have you heard about such and such, that kind of thing.
And was this something more like back when it happened, or something when the case, when it started being printed in the media, it was going to be moved here?
Recently.
Okay. So the first you've heard about it is recently?
Yes.
Okay. And recently, from talking with people at the water cooler and things like that, or just around work, have you learned any facts about the case?
No.
Okay. What generally do you even think that you know right now?
Basically, all that I think I know is that I heard that there was a small child involved, that the child was left in a hot vehicle while the person was inside sexting.
Okay.
Or doing something, online or something of that nature.
Okay. And have you heard any other facts other than that?
No.
Okay. Now, understand that, I was going to say sometimes, the media gets it wrong, and I guess you were talking about sometimes, I think, people talk, and, if you're getting stuff third hand, that may not be actually what happened.
Exactly.
Okay. So just asking you, if you were selected as a juror, would you be able to put that, that talk from your coworkers aside and base your verdict solely on what comes out in the courtroom and the law from the judge?
Yeah. As a nurse, HIPAA is a real big, big thing that we have to adhere to. So
yes, sir.
That applies a lot in that area. But also, I had a friend, not a friend, but an associate that I was talking to, and her initial reaction was, "I don't see how you could. It would be guilty for me right away," she says.
Yes.
But working in mental health and addiction, I understand that there's a lot of precipitating factors, there's a lot of background, there's a lot of history that needs to be considered before you make an opinion about somebody.
Yes, sir.
Their education level, their IQ. I mean, there's all these variations that you have to consider. So I definitely understand that, and it is a process.
Okay. And like you're saying, the importance of getting the history. If the judge tells you the law that you're to apply is to considering testimony of witnesses and things like that, would you be able to do that and apply the judge's law and then just the evidence and not all the stuff you heard elsewhere?
Definitely. I can definitely be objective.
Okay.
It's a lot easier that way.
Okay, great. And I think there's just one other question. I think you said maybe you heard an opinion from a family or some member, or maybe it was a friend. Was it what you were already talking about?
Basically, yeah, just that they don't understand how, basically that it would be guilty right off the rip because of the child being left in the car, that there's no reason why a child should be left in a hot car type thing.
Right. But you realize those are their opinions and you're going to follow what's in here.
Exactly.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, so what you heard was very little, and it was primarily came from just coworkers talking.
Random.
And it had to have been something within the last couple of months after the case was moved down here?
Well, it was actually when I received the summons because I was like, I got jury duty, and then it was like, well, what case is it? It's got to be this case or it's got to be that case. And I wasn't aware about it. I hadn't even heard about it until then.
Okay. And, all you're really telling us is that you had at least one coworker that expressed an opinion that she didn't even need to hear any evidence. As far as she's concerned, it's guilty no matter what.
Right.
Okay. And I appreciate you letting us know that. That's why we're asking you this stuff in private. If I understand correctly, you're telling us you know better than that.
Yes.
You don't form an opinion based on what somebody else says before you've heard any evidence. Okay. So is it fair to say then that if selected as a juror, you would be willing to wait until you heard all the evidence before making a decision?
Most definitely.
From both sides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll send you back to the no. I'm going to have you come back on October the 3rd at 9 a.m. In the meantime, remember what I've directed you to. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss this matter with anyone or let anyone speak with you about the case, including other jurors. No contact with attorneys, parties, or witnesses to the case. Insulate yourself completely from anything to do with this case, including co-workers expressing opinions. You just got to go, no. No. You can't talk to me and I can't talk to you. Okay? Thank you so much. You're excused.
October 3rd, 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Will I receive any correspondence about that, or okay?
No, my word to your ears.
Yes, ma'am.
Okie doke.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We need juror 2. You can resume.
Thank you. And juror number 2, I just have one follow-up question or one issue to talk about. Just, you had said before that you knew somebody who had some issue involving a child who was forgotten, not in a car, but somehow in another way.
On the news,
Okay. All right. So you've heard about something like that in the news.
Not even personally.
Okay.
I knew someone.
No. I just meant if you personally knew somebody or some situation personally where a child had been forgotten but not in a car.
My mom left me at Walmart for 10 minutes.
Okay. So, you were at Walmart, where'd she go? Back out to the car? Or?
I was looking for her and I called her and I'm like, where are you? She's like, oh, I'm on my way home. I was like, well, I kind of forgot something.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
It's okay. And I assume if you had your own phone, that this was, you weren't like a little kid. This was recently or the last few years?
Recently. I was in middle school.
Okay. Did she just get busy or something and just slipped her mind?
After I asked her why she did,
She just kind of played it off when she came back to pick you up? Okay.
I didn't really talk to her about it.
Okay.
So, it's not like I was there for an hour.
Right. Okay.
I think that's it.
And what Mr. Boring first asked you about a moment ago, you just said you'd heard stories about children left in cars.
Yeah.
All right. Was this just stories that you heard on TV, you mean?
Yeah, word of mouth. News. I don't really watch the news on TV. It's more like on the phone.
Okay. And are these accounts that you saw on your phone, like little video clips from the news, or actual articles or stories?
It's articles on my little notification bar.
Right.
New York Times. so it's not.
Oh, you read the New York Times?
Every once in a while.
Okay.
I'll open it up.
Okay. All right. And how often or how many times do you think that you have heard some story like this come through your phone?
I can't recall the last time I did. Almost never really.
Okay.
Maybe 2 or 3 times.
All right. Thank you.
Come back on October 3rd at 9 in the morning to the jury assembly room. Thank you.
And juror number 3 is bringing you back in for a couple of questions like we are almost everybody, based upon some of your answers. First of all, I know at the beginning of the jury selection, y'all were asked several questions and raise your hand and I would reply to you. Just kind of flesh that out a little bit more. You raised your hand about whether you informed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant. Now, what the question is going to be, we don't come in here in a vacuum. Everybody comes in here with their life experiences, opinions, things like that. That's not some disqualifying thing. What we need to know is that anything that you've heard, things like that, can you put that aside? Or if you form some opinion about whatever issue in this case, it basically, as a juror, if you are selected, you can follow the law that the judge gives you, and that you can take and make the decision in the case only on the evidence in here that comes out in this courtroom, not any preconceived notions or opinions that you have.
I can do that.
Okay. So kind of as a starting point, that's what I wanted to ask you. Now, the second question or second issue we want to take up with you is regarding things you may have heard either in the media, from family members, people have heard, or think they've heard things about this case from different sources. Have you heard something about the case in the media before you came here today?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Tell me just a little bit about what you've heard, either local, national media. Was it something that happened back when the incident occurred, or something recent when everything got moved to Brunswick?
Pretty much it was when it first started.
Okay.
Right. Do you want me to tell you what I heard?
Yes, I know y'all are in a different market than we have in Atlanta, so that's why we're asking. You guys may have heard something different than may have happened in the Atlanta media, or that's why we're asking. So what do you think that you know about the case, or what have you heard, as best you remember?
I remember that somebody left some child in a car and left the child in there all day in the heat. And I believe the person came back to the car or something like that, knew the child was in there, and then they said they didn't know, or something like that, and the child died. And then I'm not sure if it was, I think it was later, I heard that he was talking to underage females and having sexual, talking with them through the whatever.
All right.
Texting and sending photographs and stuff like that. So.
And is that the extent of what you think you know about the case?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, some about the wife, I'm not sure. They were like hiding something. I don't know if this was the one.
So you even
Stuff was on the internet and they were trying to hide it and got caught, or that was later, I believe.
Okay.
And that was pretty much it. And then I didn't even know till yesterday that this was the case.
All right, and your opinion that you formed, have you formed a specific opinion about what crimes he is either guilty or innocent of, or anything like that?
I just know if he, I just think that the only thing I feel is leaving a child in a car by itself is very unexcusable. That's my opinion. And I don't understand the shoe thing, because if you put a shoe there, you've got the damn child in there, so that would be,
Yes.
wow. So anyway, the act is, I think, is bad.
Okay. So your opinion, let me ask you this. Would your opinion be toward the act of doing that, not specifically to this defendant?
Right. It don't matter who the person is.
Yes.
Not to this person, but the act of doing it, of course.
Okay. And I'm sorry. If you were selected as a juror, would you be able to put stuff you've heard out before, whatever you think you know, put it aside, and render a decision and make the state prove and make the evidence prove that these acts actually happened, and that under the law, whatever we have charged has to be proven under the law?
I can do that.
Okay. And is any opinion, just going to be legalese, but is there any opinion that you hold, is it so fixed and definite that you could not render a verdict based on the evidence in the law?
I'm fine. I can.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, sir.
Bear with us another minute. Just have a seat, please. Yes, you should know by now there's always more to come, isn't there? Yeah. I'm sure that's a commonality of opinion in there.
Okay, let's start with the media exposure. If I understand correctly, you're telling us that your exposure to information started over 2 years ago when this story first was published in the news.
Correct.
Okay. And what sources of information do you believe that you were exposed to?
Television, and maybe a friend of mine who used the newspaper at the time that telling stories.
Okay.
Other than that, pretty much the television.
All right, let's start with television then. Is there a particular national news that you listen to at night, or is there a local news station that you
Fox News.
Fox News? Fox News and CNN?
Right.
All right. And so do you recall if it would have been through those sources that you heard some of this information?
Right. I was listening to it in my bedroom when I first heard it. I remember that.
Okay. And you would agree, certainly on CNN, there, in addition to sort of a news format, there's also a talk format where they have experts come in and give their opinions, where they have lawyers give their opinions. Do you know if you heard any of those sort of accounts?
I don't recall any of that.
You don't
Just
recall?
pretty much how it started. I don't listen to much of the news. I just hear from other people, and then just turn on the news when I can, and then later on I just heard more about it.
Right.
So I didn't follow it. So I just heard about it.
All right, so you heard about it when it first occurred, and then you said later on you heard more about it.
Right.
And is that later on hearing more about it also information that you would have gotten from Fox News and CNN?
Pretty much.
Okay. And by later on, do you mean the week after and 2 weeks after and a month after? How much longer did you hear about the story?
However long it took for them to say, like, they found out more, like, as far as I remember, is more of the, when they found out that he was talking to other females, whatever, and that was pretty much, and then I'm not sure if this is the same case with his wife, trying to cover him up, I'm not really sure. And then that was pretty much the end of it. I didn't follow up or hear anything else of it.
All right. And you indicated that you didn't read a newspaper, but you had a friend who regularly reads the newspaper. And do I take it to mean that friend conveyed some information to you that he or she had read about?
Right. He just tells me everything that's going on in the newspaper.
And do you believe that's where you got some of the information that you shared with us as well?
It could have been.
Okay. So if you were seeing it on the news, then obviously in addition to whatever you're hearing, there's images there as well. Do you remember what images that you would have been exposed to when watching this on the news?
Just his face.
Okay. And when you say his face, you talk about Ross?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you recognized Ross when you came in here the first day and saw him?
I didn't remember the face. I just remember the image. I just remember the face was on the television, but I wouldn't have noticed.
Okay.
Until he came in.
Is that the same guy you saw on TV?
I did. That's the same guy.
Okay. And what about a picture of Cooper? Did you see an image of Cooper Harris on TV?
No, sir.
Did not. All right. Did you see images of any scene with a vehicle that was roped off with crime tape?
No, sir.
You don't recall that?
No, sir.
Okay. All you saw was an image of Ross.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And then the information that you can recall at this time: left child in a car. And what about the relationship between Ross and the child left in the car? Did you know what that relationship was?
No, sir.
Okay. You didn't hear that Ross was Cooper's father?
I knew he was the father of the child.
Okay.
What the television was saying.
All right. All right. And then did you hear what time of day it was or anything that had happened during the morning?
I assume it was during a hot part of the day.
Okay. Did you hear anything about breakfast or Chick-fil-A or restaurant or anything like that?
I don't recall that.
Did you hear anything about where he worked?
No, sir.
Right. Did you hear anything about the area of Cobb County that this occurred?
Atlanta.
Just Atlanta? All right.
Area.
You said you heard something about coming back to the car. What's, to the best of your recollection, what did you hear about that?
I just remember something like he came back to the car and, I don't know, something. And the child was still in there and he left the child in the car still.
Okay. To the best of your recollection, when did you hear that he came back to the car?
Really, that was later, I think. I don't remember the time frame.
Okay. And if I heard you correctly, when you were speaking with Mr. Boring, you said, if I heard you correctly, came back to the car and he knew the child was there.
That's what I heard on the television.
All right. And of course, again, best of your recollection, that would have been from either on CNN or Fox News. What was conveyed, what you heard, was that he came back to the car knowing that the child was there. Okay. All right, and then you said, I believe you said at a later time you heard that he was talking to underage females.
That was on the news.
That was on the news. And do you believe that was a different time frame?
Yes, sir.
Right. Sometime, and I know this has been more than 2 years ago, so sometime thereafter, weeks later, or months later, or something.
However, I don't know. I mean, I can't say. It might have been a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Whenever they found out.
All right. And who is they finding out?
The media or the police.
All right. And then you said something about sex and images, or sex and pictures or photos. What did you hear about that?
Just like I said, on the media, he was talking and texting and sending images to females, underage females.
All right. And the time frame that you heard he was doing this, when did you hear he was doing that?
I think it's about the same time. Probably, obviously, it was after the first time I heard about it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant when during the day. What did you remember hearing reported about when he was texting or talking to people?
I think it was, from what I heard, it was during the same day that Scott was in the car.
All right. And then you said you heard something about his wife. To the best of your recollection, what is it you think you heard about his wife?
That she knew about what was going on, and something about they had the internet going on their computer, and like the police or whoever found some information on the computer that they wanted to, that they were planning on doing that act with the child, and they're trying to cover it up.
All right, so you heard on either Fox News or CNN that police found something on their computer that, are you telling us that you heard that they were working together to kill their child?
Something like that.
Okay.
That's what I understood.
That's what you understood. All right. Kill their child in this specific manner.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you hear about any particulars as far as what it was that the police supposedly found, like internet searches or anything like that?
Right. I believe they searched, from what I heard on the television, is that they searched what would happen to a child if it was left in a vehicle in the heat.
Okay.
How it would.
All right. What would happen to a child if left in a vehicle in the heat? All right. And what you heard on Fox or CNN was that they both had done this search, or just that he had done the search and she knew about it?
From my understanding, they both did it.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but that's what
All right. Did you hear anything about her being arrested?
No.
Did not. Okay.
Yeah. After that, I haven't heard anything about the story.
All right. Do you remember hearing anything about private conversations between husband and wife that the police knew about?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. Do you remember hearing anything in the news about anything that that Ross told the police?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. And so when you came in here, and is that pretty much summarized to the best of your recollection, kind of at least generally what it is that you recall being exposed to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you didn't, or did you follow up on anything? I mean, did you look anything up? Did you look any stories up or fact check anything that you had heard on Fox or CNN?
As in, like the last day or two?
Anytime. Have you Googled anything to?
No, sir.
Have not. Okay. Have you seen on television or on the internet anything about prior court hearings or about this case being in court?
No, sir. I didn't even know this was in court till yesterday. I didn't even know. I didn't know what I was getting into. So.
Okay. We kind of figured it out since then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Pretty high profile when the news was out there. So.
Okay. I saw them. All right. So when you came in, all of these things that you're telling us about, this is all stuff that had information that had come to you before you ever got your jury summons.
Right.
Right. And it caused you to form an opinion. Right?
Yes, sir.
I know you're nervous, but I assure you that you couldn't possibly say anything to us that would offend anybody or shock anybody. Okay, so don't worry about what you say. That's why we're asking you these questions. Okay. On the first day, the judge asked if, or I guess it was yesterday, asked if anyone had formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused. You raised your hand, indicating that you had. Okay. So what was that opinion? Was that he was guilty or that he was not guilty?
Well, if it was the act, he would be guilty if that was proven.
Well, so you're saying if
from the media exposure that I didn't even know. I didn't know this case was done. I didn't know, so I assumed he was guilty or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that was, I formed an opinion that he was guilty.
All right.
What I heard.
Is this a fair statement from what you knew and heard coming into it? Did you form the opinion that he was guilty?
Right.
Okay. And so yesterday when the judge asked you if you formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence, is it fair to say that's what you meant?
Right.
Okay. You haven't heard any evidence in the case, right?
Right.
You haven't seen any evidence?
No, sir.
Okay. So it's fair to say between yesterday when you honestly shared your opinion that you're now telling us that your opinion was that he's guilty, you haven't heard any evidence, so is it fair to say nothing's changed? That's still your opinion?
I could sit there like I told these gentlemen, if I can separate, because I know, he's a human being, so he has his right to prove himself not guilty or guilty. So I can, separate myself.
Okay. Well, I'll get to that. And of course, knowing someone has a right is not the same thing as having an opinion as to whether or not they're guilty. So the first part of my question is, as we sit here today, is that still your opinion? Is it still your opinion that he's guilty?
No, sir. I have to look at the evidence.
All right. So you no longer have an opinion then?
Correct, sir.
Okay. All right. Then the question that I would need to ask you is, what has happened since the opinion you shared yesterday or that you shared today? What has happened to change your mind that, yes, I have an opinion that he's guilty, to now you don't have an opinion? What have you heard or seen, or what has occurred?
Well, that was the first question that was asked during the day, so it infuriated me to hear that. So I raised my hand because of that, guilty. And then as he left, I just figured, just thinking about it, you gotta still, prove yourself, and you gotta look at the evidence before he's guilty or not guilty.
Okay. What infuriated you?
That someone would leave a child in the car and knowing that the child was in there and needed to die.
Okay. And based on what you heard in the media, do you believe that that's what happened?
I have to find out.
Okay. Do you want to serve on this jury?
Not necessarily.
All right. Mr. Boring asked about court-martial cases. You were not court-martialed when you were in the military, were you?
No, sir.
All right. But were you charged with a crime?
No, sir.
Were you discharged in 1988?
Yes, sir. And then I went back in the military. I got discharged in 2011.
Okay. You did 2 stints?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have an administrative discharge of a charge in 1988?
No, sir.
Have you ever been charged or accused with extortion?
Yes, I have. I believe that that's the case. I did not go to court for that.
Okay.
So I don't even know how that happened.
All right. Well, when you say you don't know how that happened, let me ask you this. If you were in the Army in 1988, were you at any time arrested for extortion?
No, sir.
Okay. So you were never, you never went through any sort of formal administrative proceeding? Were you ever taken into custody and handcuffed or booked or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you have any idea why your criminal history might reflect an extortion that was discharged in 1988?
I went back to Germany, and these Americans, I was at a bar, and these Americans wanted to fight, so they jumped on me for some reason, and I had concussion, and basically, I just said if they would do like a class to with their alcoholism, that I would drop charges, and they helped pay for the medical bill. That's what I told the lieutenant, which I remember his name.
Okay.
And the next thing I know, somebody did a background on me, and they, the same thing. I was extortion. I don't even know. I mean, I didn't go to court. I wasn't handcuffed, anything. So.
Okay. You think it's just a mistake? You didn't receive any sort of paperwork indicating that you had a charge?
No, sir.
You didn't have to go through any sort of administrative proceeding?
No, sir.
Okay. At the time of discharge, do you know that if there was anything in any documentation in your file explaining the extortion notation?
No, sir. So you would be the second person that said something like that. I mean, the military. When I went back, they didn't say anything. So.
All right. If in fact your NCIC indicated an arrest date of September the 16th, 1988, are you telling us that is false?
I would believe so.
You were not arrested on September the 16th, 1988?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Do you believe that is the date of the bar fight or whatever it is you're telling us about?
That'd be about right. So I was out. I was supposed to get out like in October, and I stayed up on my leave time, and I got, took a vacation for a month in Germany. Before I got out.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions.
Just a couple of questions, Judge. Sir, had you thought about this case since you first heard about it a couple of years ago, or was this the first time you thought about it when you actually walked in?
First time I thought about it.
Okay. Now, just following up that last line of questioning, is it possible that this was something that was actually a Chapter 10 separation or like a memorandum of reprimand? Do those sound like things you've heard of before?
No.
Okay.
I didn't go through any proceeding of any kind.
And is it something that would maybe been in a file that you didn't even know about?
I
Do you have any clue?
I have no clue how they got in there.
Okay. You remember there was some incident, but you don't know exactly what happened with it, but you know for sure you got back in the military. You weren't ever booked or fingerprinted or anything like that?
Right.
Okay. And do you have any idea what the military may have been submitted? Do you even know how the military works when they report things to a criminal history or GCIC? Any clue?
No, sir. I've not dealt with this.
Okay. All right. Just a second. That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
Anything further? I'm going to excuse you. Come back October 3rd at 9 a.m. Thank you, sir. We'll see you then. Juror number 9 a.m. Juror 4. Juror 4, when you're ready. Just a minute, Mr. Boring. Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, Juror 4. Actually, just one topic to follow up on. It's the only thing you'd raise your hand on about we needed to talk to you. Just about where you've heard about the case. I know people have heard varied things about it. Some people maybe back when it happened. Other people, just locally when people got their jury summons and figured out something was coming here to Brunswick. But generally, what have you learned about this case, and where did you hear about it?
When it happened a couple of years ago, just what it was in the paper then or on the news, and a couple of years ago, and then more. Just when I got my jury summons. In fact, I didn't even think this was the case when I was playing with it
Okay.
last week.
Yes, ma'am. So,
not until I got in line.
Right. Okay. So between that time that you heard about it initially and the time you were walking in the courthouse, had you really even thought about this case?
No.
Okay. And just tell us a little bit about, do you remember what you heard in the news? And was this something like a local news you just saw a blurb of, or was it something more in depth?
I don't even remember. It was more about just more of what happened.
Okay. And what, as far as you understand, what did you understand had happened?
The child was left in the car.
Do you remember any other details whatsoever other than a child being left in the car about what had happened that day, what was going on, what anybody was doing in particular, anything like that? Okay. Do you remember specifically any locations involved in the case?
It was in Atlanta.
Okay. I don't want to make assumptions, I just want to make sure. That minimal amount that you've heard, would you have any problem putting that aside and basing a decision in this case, if you are a juror, based solely on the evidence in the courtroom and the law the judge gives? Would you have any problem doing that?
No.
Okay, that's all I have, Judge.
Okay, the media exposure that you had, was this primarily just TV?
Yeah. Probably. I mean, it's been so long. It's been 2 years. There may have been a blurb or something in the Brunswick paper, but that would have been it.
Okay. Because the way Mr. Boring phrased the question, you indicated that, or you agreed that basically what you heard was that a child was left in a car. Would you have any way of knowing this case was any different than any other reports of when a child's left in a car?
No.
Okay. No other details other than the fact that it was in Atlanta.
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated nothing else about the specific locations. Do you remember anything about a restaurant or a place of business? Okay. What about if there was a familial relationship between the child and the person who left the child in a car?
That it was the father.
Okay. So that's a little bit of information you knew, that it was the father. Okay. And do you remember seeing any, as it was on the news, seeing any images of either an individual or a child or a scene or a vehicle?
No, I don't remember seeing that.
Okay. All right. And so then when the story began to reappear in, I guess, locally in the Brunswick paper, the Jacksonville paper, did you recall what it was about?
Just that little bit I just told you, nothing in detail.
Okay. And you haven't Googled or followed up or done any research on this? Okay. Or any other case like this?
No.
Now, we've questioned you a little bit over 2 days, and you've given us a lot of information, some personal information. Is there anything that we haven't asked you about or anything that you think that we need to know in determining whether or not you might be an appropriate juror for this case?
No, I did say that I had, one thing that has bothered me, I think I told you I was on the grand jury for a year, and my husband corrected me, and that I was on it for 6 months. It's on for 6 months.
Okay.
However, it still felt like a year.
All right. So your husband is a details person in addition to you?
Not probably as much as I am, but that was his job at the time, so.
Okay.
You know a little more about that than I do.
He knows what the terms of court are here. Okay. You think you'd be able to wait until the end of the trial until you heard all of the evidence before making a decision?
Yeah.
You think you can give both sides a fair trial?
I'm telling the truth, yeah.
Thank you.
Nothing else, Judge.
I'm going to excuse you. Please return October 3rd at 9 a.m. Keep an open mind, no discussion. Don't allow yourself to have any exposure to any information. Thank you. All right, it's a good time for a lunch recess. We'll break until 1:15.